Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you doing? It is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019. It's the day after April Fool's Day, so I guess we're done with that nonsense. Not that it didn't inspire me to discuss it in the morning's post at Daily Kos, but that has nothing to do with what we're going to do with the show because, I don't know, sometimes you just have to come up with something to populate that space, and I did it. What more do you want from me? Okay, Daily Kos Radio is live now. Here we can get some indication of what we might do today from Bill in Portland, Maine. Daily Kos Radio now being live. Kagro X, that's me, reminds you to get your daily recommended allowance of fiber. It is important. And also yell at the TV whenever Trump is on. That you can do that daily, multiple times daily. No cap, no limit on how often you can do that. And now, Bill says, and I agree, please enjoy this complimentary radio program live from Istanbul. Why not? Well, aside from the fact that you might be murdered by the Sauds if you go into their consulate. I guess, what are the odds of that? A, what are the odds of my being in Istanbul? 2, just to mix the metaphors a little bit, and they're not metaphors. A2 part, what's left to me, Roman numeral 1. Don't go into the Saudi or the Saud-owned consulate, which I guess would have been in another city, wouldn't it have been, had it been in Istanbul? Although you can have a consulate in Istanbul too, as well as your embassy. I don't know. Anyway, don't get murdered, really. That's the bottom line. Do try and follow that advice if you can at all help it. Well, let's begin rounding up today's stories. Lots of morning Twitter chatter to discuss, of course. Let's see. I mean, gosh, there's more to tell about the supposed play for healthcare dominance by the Republicans. Donald Trump having declared them now, the Republicans, to be intent on becoming the party of healthcare. I see he has promised everybody a healthcare plan. Well, I mean, the Republicans have been saying, of course, that they would repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act for 10 years now and have never actually come up with a plan to do that. But they keep promising that they're right around the corner with it. And I guess I hadn't tracked the news that closely, but I guess the latest is that Donald Trump has spent all the previous months while he was trying to push the Republicans into becoming the party of healthcare, or rather, push them into making the claim that they were going to become the party of healthcare. Probably with no intention whatsoever of getting it done. Certainly not his getting it done. Well, he's been promising that they would come out with their plan any day now for 2+ years. I guess he spent the first year just promising that he was going to do it. There would be something beautiful. We're not sure what it was, but it was going to be beautiful and world class, and everyone was going to love it. And now, as head of the Republican Party, he's been promising that the Republicans would cook something up for you very shortly. And apparently, at one point, I noticed today, he was being quoted by Driftglass, who you may know from the blogs and from Twitter and from their podcast and all the regular outlets. He dug up a quote from May of 2018 in which Trump says, wait till you see the plans we have coming out. Literally, over the next 4 weeks, we have great healthcare plans coming out. Many of them deal with finally cementing these dentures down so that I can stop jutting my jaw out to catch them from falling on the floor. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. 4 weeks. He usually goes with 2 weeks. And my theory is that is 2 times 2 weeks, and it's double the usual lie. And of course, that was May of 2018. 4 weeks later, of course, would have been June of 2018. It now being April of 2019, and there's still no plan. I think we all know what that means. It was just interesting that, he spent that much time insisting that the plan was coming any day. It is a year later, and now the new plan, it appears, is that the great health care will be revealed and perhaps closer to the election and voted on after the election. In other words, he's setting up the 2020 vote as a referendum on health care, which I don't know what ordinary strategists would make of this, but of course, would represent the 10th year or maybe 11th year of Republicans failing to come up with an alternative. And they're going to run on, we've failed you for a decade, but this time we're totally going to get it. Vote for us. Then we'll reveal our plan. And then the voting will take place after the election when Donald Trump predicts Republicans will hold the Senate and regain a majority in the House. And of course, he'll win re-election. And then beautiful, terrific, fantastic, world-class healthcare will be put in place. And I guess everybody will be happy at that point. So, okay, just, an update on where they stand in that. Just another great example of, how to read a Trump comment. 2 weeks, 4 weeks, any day now. More and more. It's waiting. And of course, none of his base will notice or care about the fact that, he ran the first time on, this would be so easy. I'm going to get it done. It takes a businessman. I am a businessman, whatever. And I'm just going to go in there and I'm just going to crack heads together and we're going to get this thing done. And 4 years later, he's going to be running on, no, this time I really am going to do it. And I don't know. I mean, for normal people, that's like, well, yeah, right. There's no chance of that happening, so we're just not interested. But of course, these aren't normal times, and neither is his base filled with normal people. So, okay. That's just where we are with that. On other fronts, let's see. Plenty of news. That is to say, plenty of discussion of the lack of news on the Mueller report. The Mueller report remains bottled up. William Barr now insisting that they will produce yet another fictitious version of the report and offer that up as the genuine article. Everyone insisting that they won't accept that. Today being Tuesday makes tomorrow, Wednesday, the day that the House Judiciary Committee has slated for, I guess, beginning the process, if not actually voting out, the various threatened subpoenas for the original unredacted Mueller report and some connected persons as well from whom the various committees would like to hear. Let's see. I have a couple of pieces here, I'm pretty sure somewhere. We've got a piece from The Hill. I'm sorry. That's a different investigation into the soul, if there is one, of the Trump administration. That would be the security clearance question. So, okay. Tomorrow, though, is slated for the vote on subpoenas, as we discussed yesterday with respect to the Mueller report. And they did have, I believe, a list of, I thought it was like 4 or 5. Did we read the article about which 5 it was? 4 or 5 people that the House Judiciary Committee was interested in looking at or speaking to about these things. Did I? Let me check the archive and see if that would indicate to me that we had read everything we were going to glean. We got everything out of it that we wanted to. We had milked the story for all it was worth and put it away. But offhand, it's difficult to say which ones are which. Sometimes Pocket doesn't label these things all that clearly. Okay. Well, at any rate, I do know that we have this story from The Hill regarding there are other witnesses that I think the House Oversight Committee is interested in speaking to, and we can check in on them. We may have to jump around a little bit to get all of these things. Let's see. Oh, by the way, sourcing for the Trump reversal on healthcare, just by way of backing up what we're saying, we'll share this with you later. The Bloomberg News post from Sahil Kapoor and John Harney, Trump in reversal, says replacing Obamacare can wait until after the election. Going to have great health care 2 weeks, 4 weeks, next year, maybe the year after that. Trump now saying they'll wait until after the 2020 elections to hold a vote on a replacement for Obamacare, abruptly halting a push he began just last week and, of course, had been promising for several years, but renewing the push. In other words, another infrastructure week here on healthcare. He wants this to be the referendum of 2020 this week. Next week, he'll want something else to be the issue of 2020. He's not a focused individual. Neither am I. I can understand and sympathize. That doesn't mean I would vote for him. I would say stay far away from somebody who can't organize like that. Like me. I mean, it's fine for a radio show, bad for the presidency. He made the shift in a series of Twitter posts, because that's where shifts are made when you're president of the United States, late Monday night, saying that the, quote, vote will be taken right after the election when Republicans hold the Senate and win back the House. So, I mean, on top of the weirdness of the strategy, there is a small issue of, one, nobody knows whether they will control the majorities there, and two, that if they do, it will be, of course, the majority leaders of those respective bodies that will decide when a vote takes place. Not that he can't prevail upon them to do it. It's just that they're not obligated by any means to do so. And of course, because you're talking about Donald Trump, you cannot be at all sure that he understands that immediately following the election is not when the vote can be held. He doesn't specify that he wants it, done in mid to late November or even December, but you get the feeling that he thinks that's when it would happen. So if election day is I don't know what day is the election in 2020, we'd have to look it up, but basically I'm sure he thinks the day after they should have the vote, but of course it will still be, no matter what happens, a majority Democratic House at that point. Anyway, that's apparently his plan. The posting, it goes on to say, that is the Twitter posting, ended a week-long scramble by GOP lawmakers to come up with an Obamacare alternative after the administration unexpectedly changed its position in a lawsuit, this we talked about, by arguing that Obamacare should be entirely struck down. Trump's Justice Department had previously said that it should only be partly overturned. A final court ruling in that case is likely to come before June of 2020. If Trump wins in court, there could be swift and widespread chaos. He loves chaos. So does, Greg loves saying chaos, or reminding us that Trump loves chaos anyway. And in addition to this beloved chaos, also uncertainty in American healthcare, at least until an alternative system is put in place, as the array of changes to industry regulations, subsidies for low-income individuals, and delivery system reforms would be undone. The president tweets, mysteriously enough, that everybody agrees, whatever that means, that Obamacare, whatever that means, doesn't work, whatever that means. Some lawmakers were critical of Trump's announcement. Can you believe it? From his very first day in office, his goal has been to get rid of Obamacare. Senator Tim Kaine told CNN on Tuesday. Kaine advocates a plan called Medicare X. That's so edgy sounding. Which he said is a Medicare-produced policy, that can be bought on the exchange. It's different from Medicare for All proposals in that it merely provides an option rather than replacing most private coverage. Okay, interesting distinction. There's more. A Republican has something to say. Is it a lie? Probably. He said on Tuesday on Fox, I won't even tell you who it is. I'm going to skip that part. All right, it's Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee, saying on Fox Business Network's Mornings with Maria program that he doesn't believe Trump is planning to wait until 2020 to devise an alternative to Obamacare because he's a leader who doesn't shy away from problems. Mark, have you got a newspaper handy? Have you met the president? Well, all right. So Green says, we have to tackle this issue. We can't run from it just because it's a political hot potato. Okay. Trump rekindled the long-running political conflict over health care last week when he ordered his Justice Department to shift its position in a Texas lawsuit. We know this part. Okay, so bottom line, I think, of this article, having shifted their position on the lawsuit, they are making it their official stance that they want the entirety of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, overturned, which might happen in June of 2020, which would throw the American healthcare scene into chaos and disruption. And his new plan, now that he has adopted this stance, or forced the Justice Department to take this stance, is to let the chaos continue, to let the United States, all healthcare consumers in the United States, languish possibly without insurance from June of 2020 until, well, he may have ideas of it happening in November, but it couldn't be voted on with a Republican majority, even if they win the elections, until January of 2021. And, well, it's probably not going to happen right away, and it's going to take a couple of months to come up with the plan, and then a couple of months to push it through, and then a couple of months to conference it out, or whatever they do to finalize it, and then signature and implementation. So you're looking at a minimum of a year and a half to 2 years without any insurance for anybody, anywhere, of any kind, possibly, or millions of people who used to buy their insurance through the exchanges anyway. Now, suddenly, possibly either without insurance or forced to pay considerably more for the same insurance, or some new formulation of insurance that may or may not cover them. So it sounds like appropriately chaotic. And great, that's it. So, they changed their stance. But I guess now that they're supposedly for the entire overturning, or rather, they are for the overturning the entirety of the ACA, they obviously now have to come up with a replacement. And they say, yeah, we'll get to that. Someone else will come up with it, and it'll be beautiful, and it'll happen in about 2 years from now. So, does that satisfy everyone? Stay healthy. Take your vitamins, everyone. You have no other options. Okay. That's probably pretty scary for most people. Let's see. I know that I read a couple of things in there that make me think of other stories that require attention as well. I did see, here it is, because the underlying story and all of that was Trump tweeting out policy direction without anybody being aware of it and catching the administration by surprise, the rest of the so-called administration by surprise on healthcare. We might as well note that, well, by now, this is something he does all the time and in every area. There was another story that I caught wind of here, of course, in the Hill, because that's where I catch wind of everything, because they're very good at plastering themselves all over my Twitter timeline. The Pentagon apparently caught off guard by his tweets last week that he was going to unilaterally close the southern border at some point this week. Of course, it is now this week. Yesterday being Monday and April Fool's Day, it might have been a fantastic day to kick things off. But as you know, Monday is a little early in the week for him. He's still a little sleepy, thinking about golf. Doesn't get to the office until, 11:30 or so. So no real opportunity for him to have gotten the work done at that point. Today, though, Tuesday, maybe after rubbing the eyes a little bit and trying to see what you can, maybe put some cream on them to get the puffiness down, have a briefing of some point, maybe on television. Maybe he can get around to doing this. But The question was posed to Pentagon personnel yesterday here on video, featured in the tweet by The Hill. Question: has the Pentagon been asked to support the closure of the southern border, which you would assume would require some additional personnel and probably military personnel at that. The acting defense secretary, because we don't have a real defense secretary, and even if we made the acting defense secretary, he wouldn't be real. Patrick Shanahan is his name. Real name, fake job. Says yesterday, not as of this morning, but as you're tracking, it's a very dynamic and fluid situation, which of course means I don't know, you don't know, but we're all watching Trump's Twitter feed to see if he orders the armed forces to the southern border to close it. No word on the closure, nothing scheduled, just whenever he tweets it, I guess that's when it's going to happen, as you're tracking. That's a very interesting, euphemism for the whole thing. It's a dynamic and fluid situation. We're waiting on the big idiot to decide when he thinks we can snap into action, and we'll see whether the government can really respond to this moron's whims every time he whines about something. So, okay, no health care plan and no plans to come up with a health care plan, and the entirety of the Republican membership of Congress caught by surprise in his sudden demand for a health care plan. But don't worry, you have a year or so to come up with it, even though we'll be repealing the current health care plan, we think, if we prevail in court, in about a year from now. So, okay. Let's see. Let's see. I gotta deal with Armando here for just a second. He's curious about whether or not we might have room to sneak him in to discuss the Barr fan fiction and Mueller report, and of course we would like to get to that, so we can squeeze him in either bottom of the hour or, could stretch it out until 10 here. But let's see. I had another, I guess now that we've made the parallel between the Pentagon being caught by surprise and healthcare policymakers, such as they are inside the Republican Party, being caught by surprise, we will get to the promised House Oversight Committee not being caught by surprise, but their story about who they want to talk to and why. A story that broke into the headlines. Oh, got to get rid of the auto-playing video, or at least the sound from it. The story broke into the headlines yesterday during the show. Greg sent me an article or two about it. I think the leading headline there was the New York Times' version of it. Has since expanded to be covered by plenty of them, but New York Times, I guess, led the way. White House whistleblower tells Congress of irregularities in security clearances. It's the story we've heard before. That is to say, it's the story of Donald Trump intervening in the ordinary White House process for the issuance of security clearances for White House staff. Chief among them, of course, the Jared Kushner clearance, which apparently everybody working in security clearances as a professional, as a nonpartisan professional, protecting the interests of national security and the government, whether in Democratic or Republican administrations, all object. All of them say there's no way in the world this guy should be allowed access to sensitive national security material, and Trump having to force his third chief of staff, John Kelly, to push the process forward and issue the clearance. He departs the White House shortly thereafter. Jared does not, of course. And here we are. So the White House whistleblower who sounded the alarm about all this also spoke to the House Oversight Committee and had lots to say, in addition to pointing out how many people, as it's reported here, at least 25 individuals now whose applications had been denied by career employees for disqualifying issues that could put national security at risk. They were all granted security clearances nonetheless. There's also the issue of the particular whistleblower, Tricia Newbold, having been targeted for harassment and retaliation inside the White House, focusing on, apparently, her rare condition of dwarfism, which, of course, I guess rendered it hilarious to her tormentors to physically move objects out of her reach, so that she was humiliated every time she tried to either enter the office, actually moving the buzzer that you used to get into the office, to files that were necessary to do her job. So just on every level, terrible people. But the heart of the story here in the New York Times, we had learned it before, just basically that they were reshuffling papers and automatically stamping approved at the word of the president on people's applications for national security clearances. Leads us to another question, I guess, as we enter into our break and prepare to discuss the Mueller report, though I will still give you a quick update on where the Oversight Committee, wrong music, see, we got the buttons crossed up there, where the Oversight Committee is on following up on this story, the security clearances. Wow. I mean, I guess not much in the way of new news about it, except new detail on just how opposed to issuing these security clearances these folks were. And then a list of 9 White House officials of interest to the Dem security clearance probe in the Oversight Committee. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Armando joins us. So let's set up the scene. There's I guess at least a 3-pronged approach that we could be taking here to discussion of the current state of oversight in the House over the Trump administration, such as it is. So I had promised you, I guess we really, I don't know, the way to make this move the most smoothly is to say that I think we know what we need to know about the underlying story on the national security clearances. I'm not certain that there wasn't anything new from yesterday's New York Times reporting, but I guess they were really just covering Tricia Newbold's appearance before the committee, and I don't feel like I learned anything new or particularly juicy about how and why the White House officials were ordered by Trump to give mostly his family security clearances.
I would just say this about that. And good morning, David. It goes that one of the important parts of what oversight by the Congress does is shed light.
Yes.
And bring attention to issues. So even though we knew most of everything that was said yesterday, it was important to remember.
Yes, we do need a reminder because, any day of the week, something equally horrifying will replace it. And, you want to bring people back to, oh, yes, right, I was outraged about that last week. Thank you for investigating it this week. So, there were, like I said, new eye-openers, mostly about, although we had heard a little bit about this too, about how they were retaliating against this whistleblower personally, in order to embarrass her, shut her up. I'm not sure why they thought, the story would be put back in the bottle here, but I guess they just wanted to take their revenge. I guess one of the newer developments is, and this is covered in the Hill piece on the 9 White House officials of interest, John Bolton's security clearance apparently was among those that was a problem, which is amazing because he's been a national security fixture for years. I mean, he was always probably should have been denied because he was nuts, but it didn't happen. Anyway, so the news, I guess, of yesterday was that the House Oversight and Reform Committee has, as they say here in this Hill article, zeroed in on a handful of current and former officials in Trump's White House as part of their investigation into the administration's security clearance practices. Memo released yesterday detailing allegations raised by the whistleblower, again, Tricia Newbold, who has worked as a career official in the executive office of the president for 18 years. So not a newcomer by any stretch of the imagination. Newbold told the committee staff last month, as we said, that she and other career staffers denied applications for multiple security clearances, decisions that were later overturned by senior officials, that would be Trump, in order to allow those individuals to access classified material. The list of individuals whose clearances were granted despite initial denials totaled 25, according to Newbold. Cummings didn't identify all 25 in the memo, but there were 9 that he singled out. John Bolton, top of the list. Dems apparently seeking additional information on Bolton's security clearance, a subject party members aired concerns about when the National Security Advisor joined the Trump administration last spring. The president picked Bolton in March of 2018 to replace H.R. McMaster, who you may not even remember at this point. Bolton worked in the State Department and Justice Department under previous Republican presidents, George W. Bush, most notably, I think. Dems seized on a more recent interaction with Russian nationals, always at the heart of everything, in questioning his clearance bona fides. Bolton appeared in a video for the Russian gun rights group, The Right to Bear Arms, in 2013. We heard all about them. Of course, they're a representative in the United States currently in prison on essentially espionage charges. But la-di-da, doesn't matter. National Security Advisor does a video for the spies. Terrific. The group was established by Russian politician Alexander Torshin, a staunch ally of Vladimir Putin. Cummings, who at the time was ranking member of the Oversight Committee, sought details on upon Bolton's appointment over whether he had reported his previous work with the group. Tim Kaine suggested last year Bolton's contacts with the group could impede his ability to receive a clearance, but apparently they did not.
Apparently not.
I mean, they did at some level, where people took it seriously and worked in a nonpartisan fashion. They impeded his ability to receive a clearance until Donald Trump intervened and said, give it to him. Jared Kushner is the next one on the list, and I don't think anybody needs an update on who he is and why his clearance was troublesome. We learned all about it last time, right? Ivanka Trump is the next, so that's fun.
Foreign entanglements.
Yes, there can't be really any other reason. And I like the fact that she's on this list, and I guess that they'd like to hear from her. I guess she's the oldest Trump child not yet subpoenaed by Congress. Or maybe Eric. Was Eric never subpoenaed? Maybe not. So forget it. It's just Donald Jr. It's not a pattern at all. But, okay, we've been waiting for Ivanka's turn in the hot seat. Michael Flynn is next on the list. We know all about him. Rob Porter back in the news because he's still on the list. Once again, he's the guy who got his clearance he got temporary clearance, which was part of the story of Jared
domestic
also.
Violence history, and the possibility of blackmail.
Right. Two ex-wives who he had abused. So there's your pattern. So, okay. Rob Porter, I apologize to the poor Trump family. Rob Porter has abused more ex-wives than Donald Trump has had children subpoenaed by Congress. Just want to get that right. 50% more, or 100% more, as a matter of fact, at this level. Okay. Next up, Sebastian Gorka, who I kind of hoped was never coming back. But there you go. And you'll know when he's testifying by his Ford Mustang being parked outside.
Parked on the sidewalk.
Art War. Art War, I guess, if you look at it just right. But, okay, we know what you're getting at. Anyway, K.T. McFarland, the other double-initialed national security figure of the Trump administration. H.R. McMaster, mentioned earlier, not on the list. K.T. McFarland is on the list. She, of course, worked as a deputy for Flynn, which should lose you your security clearance automatically, no matter who you are. But I guess she, too, has conversations with Russians that either she herself had and didn't disclose, or for some reason she claimed she was not aware somehow of the conversations that Flynn was having with foreign officials, even though she was his deputy. John McEntee is the next name on the list, about whom I know very little, but we can read his blurb. He worked as the president's personal assistant until March of 2018, when troubles getting a security clearance reportedly played a role in his departure. In other words, he was the president's personal assistant until they discovered, wow, this person has no security clearance and can't get one. Maybe we shouldn't keep him around. Multiple media reports at the time said he was fired after he was denied a security clearance because of concerns about his finances and gambling habits. And Trump didn't force a clearance for him, interestingly. McEntee was part of Trump's entourage dating back to his presidential campaign, and his duties included making sure the president had markers to sign autographs. This is a true coffee boy. Delivering messages to Trump at his residence and ensuring the White House clocks were adjusted for daylight savings time. Shoo! Man, I mean, I thought that went
job.
Right. Well, he had several, but right. So I guess he screwed up the clocks. My clocks, like most of yours at this point, probably adjust themselves more or less automatically. But not all clocks do. I remember watching in Downton Abbey, there was a guy whose job it was to reset the clocks. And so there you go. But I didn't know you had to have national security clearance for that. They may be overdoing it with that, but I guess carrying messages back and forth to the president and markers. Right.
Could be sensitive, but who knows?
He had to have markers for him to sign autographs, and also those invisible ink pens for the yes and no quiz books that Donald Trump likes to use on his long plane trips. You know, the ones with the hidden answers.
Yes.
I loved those as a kid, and I don't see why a president shouldn't. He'd love them too. Let's see. So Robin Townley is the last name on the list, and then we can start talking about Mueller. Townley was a top aide to Flynn. He's just taken everybody down around him, but was reportedly denied a key security clearance that would have allowed him to serve on the National Security Council. The CIA rejected Townley's Sensitive Compartmented Information Clearance, SCI for short, I think. Politico reported that in February of 2017. It was not clear why Townley's clearance was rejected. He was a close ally of Flynn's, there's the answer, and former Marine intelligence officer. And that's probably half the answer there, too. Not that all Marine intelligence officers, by any stretch of the imagination, are suspect, but that means being Flynn's ally makes you suspect, and being a Marine intelligence officer puts you in a place to do some damage with your, as a result of your alliance with Flynn. It's amazing that a former national security advisor to the current president, believe it or not, of the United States, has taken down so many of his own deputies. Not that he's turned them in or anything, but what I'm saying is he was so far off the map in terms of acceptability on national security issues that we've basically had to chuck out anybody that had anything to do with him. And it's amazing that he was ever involved in the first place considering that he was basically thrown out of the Pentagon by the Obama administration for violating all of the most basic counterintelligence protocols that are, as a matter of course, imposed on people who work for the Defense Intelligence Agency. So essentially, they knew he was a spy even then.
A highlight from that, and I think it's worth mentioning in terms of a story that we're not directly talking about today, is he had surreptitiously installed his own internet connection when he was not supposed to in his secure office.
Yeah, it's one of those places that there's no information is supposed to move in and out of that place electronically, but by the physically carrying it out with authorization for just that reason. And he was like, what kind of stupid rule is that? I'm going to install hackable internet connections secretly inside the Defense Intelligence Agency because, I don't know, I like to check football scores. Or I like to not be caught carrying discs. Yeah. I don't want to...
The irony, of course, was Flynn was one of the guys who always led the locker up chants.
Yes.
And if I had done that, I'd be in jail.
Right.
And
well,
he was if you plead the fifth, you're guilty guy. So it was, listen, that's Trump world right there.
Yes.
Everything he says about other people is what he does.
Right. And another layer in which I would say it's Trump world top to bottom, another reason. No reason in the world for Mike Flynn, A, to be in government again, or B, necessarily no reason really for him to ever have been involved with Donald Trump. But the reason is he was caught violating counterintelligence protocols and fired properly from the Obama administration. That made Flynn into an Obama hater. The biggest Obama hater in the world at the time later became Donald Trump. Then he ran for president, magically, quote unquote, won the presidency, and Donald Trump made Mike Flynn national security advisor to own the libs. He had been thrown out as a spy. He put a spy in as his own national security advisor because he thought it would make liberals who had caught him and outed him as a spy angry and upset.
Just a reminder, Chris Christie, who was ostensibly for a day or two running the Trump transition team, said, "Don't put in Flynn. Don't put in Flynn."
Yeah.
And I guess Jared Kushner, who had his own history with Chris Christie, overruled.
There you go. Right.
And they put in Flynn.
And another fantastic example of it. You think we shouldn't include Flynn in the administration simply because he was outed as a spy and a foreign intelligence officer, mole in our own Defense Intelligence Agency. But I hate you because you arrested my dad because my dad was a filthy weirdo, cheating perv maniac who tried to frame his own brother in a financial deal gone bad. So I hate you. So because you are adopting the position that you're going to protect American national security by preventing this spy from being installed as national security advisor, I must, because I'm a Kushner Trump, take the position that to hell with American national security. I hate you. You like him. Therefore, I love him. That's your country.
And that's Jared Kushner's life, most likely. I mean, here's a kid who's got the luxury of that kind of attitude. So
if we ruin the national security of the United States, I'll abscond to, Russia or South America or whatever.
Or one of the Emirates or Saudi Arabia.
Right. Wherever
very
is
close to them as well.
Yes, because they love Jewish immigrants. Anyway,
I don't know. I'm just telling you. He seems
might
to have
now.
very close ties to Saudi Arabia. His relationship with Mohammed bin Salman. I mean, look, we still haven't gotten to the bottom of whether he was the guy who gave MBS the list of people to torture and kill and get out of the way because they were plotting against him.
Yes, that is true. They seem to have a very tight relationship. And who am I to warn Jared off of making his physical security dependent on a guy with a bone saw who's a Saudi royal and a rich Jewish guy shows up with all his cash in a bag. I'm not going to tell you not to go, Jared. Just, whatever. Yeah. Rob me of the joy of attending your funeral, but if you're dissolved in a barrel of acid in Saudi Arabia, it's your problem, not mine.
Listen, here's the real bottom line is if they could do that to us here, Trump and Kushner and everything, they'd be sawing us up. And they certainly would do it if they could.
Sure, absolutely. The only problem is the supply of bone saws. This
in the context of not just the Mueller report, but everything. Like Donald Trump's, I think it's worth just sort of reviewing his timeline. Well, you got the healthcare stuff and his attacks on Puerto Rico.
Mm. Oh, I didn't get to that, but we all saw them, and they're renewed.
A few days ago, Trump was tweeting like this. He said, "It's." I think this was a day ago. He tweeted it a couple of times, but here he said, "Everybody's asking how the phony and fraudulent investigation of the no collusion, no obstruction Trump campaign began. We need to know for future generations to understand this hoax should never be allowed to happen to another president or administration again." So he's calling for an investigation of the investigation, right?
Yes.
All right. Logically, to investigate the investigation, you have to find out what the results of the investigation were, i.e. the Mueller report. So he didn't really think it through that day.
Yeah.
And he was in another place. He says Democrats, here's citing some guy, I guess it was on Fox News.
Okay.
He said it's an Adam Schiff problem, people abusing the access to classified data to then go out public and make allegations that didn't prove to be true. Now, I don't know how that's an abuse of the access to classified data, but fine. You look at a decision to essentially investigate a political rival. Who made it? Now, Lindsey Graham wants to investigate Hillary Clinton again.
Oh, yes, right. Sure. Why not?
So, I mean, in essence, by definition, it's investigating a political rival, right? So they're really not making much sense. But Trump was still thinking, oh, look, I've been cleared, and that's the story. Now that and he tweeted again, now that the long-awaited Mueller report conclusions have been released, most Democrats and others have gone back to the pre-witch hunt phase of their lives before collusion delusion took over. Others are pretending that their former hero Bob Mueller no longer exists. Now, again, he doesn't seem to be worried about what's in the Mueller report. Well, something changed. Something changed. And it changed yesterday, but he really hammered it home this morning. Okay, he started this morning repeating his attacks in Puerto Rico for one, but then it's Jerry Nadler gets the treatment an hour ago on Fox and Friends. I guess he was watching Fox and Friends. And he says, in 1998, Representative Jerry Nadler strongly opposed the release of the Starr report on Bill Clinton. No information whatsoever would have or could be legally released. I don't even know what he's talking about there because the entire Starr report was released almost immediately.
Yeah, it was published. It was a bestseller.
My expectation is Nadler actually probably said, why are you putting all this salacious sex stuff in there?
Yeah.
Which is a pertinent point in the sense that wasn't criminal conduct. I'm not, Starr did it for embarrassment purposes. Let's say Mueller had the P tape.
Let's say it.
All right. Let's say he discovered there was actually a P tape.
There is.
But it wasn't used to blackmail him or collude, but I'm going to write about the P tape anyway because I want to embarrass Donald Trump.
Okay.
So, there's an argument for not putting the P tape in. It's more salacious than anything else. If it didn't really impact anything, it's just the P tape, right?
I guess.
Right.
Just a regular
Starr
P tape.
Put in the cigar story and all those stuff. The cigar story had nothing to do with anything. It was in there to embarrass. and to be what it was, just an attack on and not anything else. So that's probably what's going on. So, he's now figuring out that this morning, maybe releasing the Mueller report isn't going to be that good for me, which leads me to two conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's told them there's a lot of bad stuff in the Mueller report. Now, who told them is a good question. Somebody did. You know how these things go. But now he's saying no information whatsoever would or could be legally released, but with the no collusion Mueller report, which the Dems hate, we hate it so much, we want to see it.
Okay.
He wants it all.
What?
Nothing will ever satisfy them.
Well, that's projection, but okay. Maybe.
He says Robert Mueller was a godlike figure to the Democrats.
No.
Until he ruled no collusion in the long-awaited $30 million Mueller report. Now the Dems don't even acknowledge his name, except for demanding his report be released publicly, but fine, we don't acknowledge his name, have become totally unhinged and would like to go through the whole process again. It won't happen, he says.
Okay.
Then finally, no amount of testimony or document production that can satisfy Jerry Nadler or Shifty Adam Schiff. Shifty Adam Schiff.
Ha,
boy.
That's great.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, the anti-Semitism in this man is, he doesn't hide it. I don't care what anybody says about this. Anyway, he says it's now time to focus exclusively on properly running our great country. What is he going at? What's he doing?
I am
in my view, he's getting ready to say we're not releasing the Mueller report. He's going to overrule Barr. He'll even get Bill Barr off the hook and say, I, as president, order you not to release it. And Bill Barr will say, what can I do? The president told me not to release it.
Well, that wouldn't be terribly surprising. I mean, even if you leave it in Barr's hands to make the decision, I didn't think that he was just going to release it. Well,
he's not just going to release it. Let's remember, he said he's going to release it, but he's going to redact.
Yes.
And he's got the 4 categories now, which, when you pick those 4 categories, which are so discretionary, and just stuff like the Rule 6E material. Now, the entire Starr report was Rule 6E material. But there was a motion made to the court, joined by the President of the United States at the time, Bill Clinton, for transparency, and he said, let's waive the rules, the Rule 6E, which courts can do by a simple order. It's not a big deal. And it's been done, and it was done, and it was done for Jaworski, and it was done for Starr.
Yeah.
So the reality is that it's normal course of things. It would be done, and if it wasn't done, the media would be going crazy. But our media with Trump is, they're just not good. So what's going to happen? He's going to redact all the Don McGahn testimony and anything that was a conversation with an executive in the White House, which actually goes back to this issue of subpoenaing Jared and Ivanka. I heard this talking point yesterday. You can't subpoena the close senior White House advisors. That's just inherent executive privilege, which it isn't. But for example, security clearances, which would be a reason to call both of them.
Yes.
The background information of what was blocking them is not executive privilege. It isn't a communication with the White House. There's no executive privilege there. And what they submitted to get their security clearances. And there's no executive privilege in the report that recommended they not get security clearance. But they're going to claim security clearance. They're going to claim executive privilege. So this is the war that I think people need to get their heads around now is there's not even going to be a patina of we're cooperating with Congress on these investigations. They will give nothing. They will produce nothing. They will block everything. And Donald Trump is telling you what they're going to say. Nothing will satisfy you, so I will give you nothing.
Oh, Okay. Well, I guess that will satisfy us.
So here's the thing, Dave. We've talked about this a million times. And I know that we're about to take a break, and I don't know if you want to take it to the other side.
Well, let's begin.
But
we have a minute.
The preview. The preview.
Yeah.
What are Democrats doing waiting so long to start these fights? You're going to have to go to court, period.
Yes.
Start that now.
Yeah. They, right, and they're even pressing Richard Neal on why have you been waiting to demand the tax returns?
There is no basis for waiting.
No.
There is no question
political,
here. There is a law. It says the House Ways and Means can get, we're setting the predicate. You don't need a predicate. You cite the law. I have a right to it. Give it to me. They say, no, we're not giving it to you because we're not giving it to you. Well, you go to court, and the court has to decide.
Yes.
They're being harassing. Well, that's actually not a defense to a request from Congress.
No.
They're harassing me is not a request. It's not a defense to such a request.
It's just a black and white right to demand them. They ask them, and they give them. There's
no defense. They have an absolute right. Yes. Oh, your motive was improper. Well,
that's not part of the law.
To say it's improper?
Right. Yes, and I did see somebody tweeting around the Slate article, I guess posing the same question and saying, will William Barr misuse rules on grand jury information to conceal the Mueller report? Yeah, he will. It's not a question of, he's not worried about being proven wrong in court. His only concern is being proven wrong too quickly such that it doesn't drag out till past the election. For him to figure out that he's just blatantly violating all the laws. All right, we will be back after 1 minute to discuss it more. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Just pondering over the break what I thought. I don't know why this wouldn't be the strategy. I don't know whether they're really doing this or not. But if I were William Barr or advising him at this point, since he's announced that the next thing forthcoming is going to be this redacted version of the report, I don't know why I would waste any time, reading it and carefully redacting it and preparing to defend the redactions in court. I would simply redact literally 100% of the report and then wait as long as I could before people started screaming at me. And then when they started screaming, I'd hand it over and people would say, "This is crazy. You've redacted literally 100% of this report." And to which I would say, like George Costanza from the Seinfeld episode, "Was that wrong? I'm sorry.
Is that wrong?"
Yeah. And yes, of course it's wrong. Well, I don't know. I mean, you say yes, I say no. I guess we're going to have to go to court and literally litigate whether or not it's okay to redact 100%. What about 99.9? That's my next version.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, in essence, a subtle form of that. And I don't know if people, maybe somebody has egged, and maybe it's Fox, has egged on Trump to demand that no part of the Mueller report be released, so that when Barr defies him, quote, in quotes, but redacts 50% of the report, they said, look how transparent Bill Barr is. Trump told him not to do it, but he still gave you 50% of the words.
Yeah. I mean, there's any number of variations on that same theme, all of which are settled in only one way in the imagination of by the book Dems, which is we'll go to court and fight over it. And then we'll have a fight over the 100% redaction, the 75% redaction, the 50% redaction, the 40, the 30, and then finally an order from Trump to take it all back anyway. And it was all fake from the beginning. And lo and behold, all of a sudden it's November 2020 and courts are saying issues moot anyway. It's going to be settled at the ballot box, whatever. And that will be going on subpoenas from every committee. That'll be going on the Mueller report. That'll be going on the security clearances. That'll be going on health care. That'll be going on border emergency, everything.
Well, the irony will be when Lindsey Graham is asking for all the investigatory materials on the emails and Comey and everything, and they just hand it all over without a peep.
Yeah, I guess so. Right. Well, so I anticipate this as being an unending battle because at the end of the day, there's no real history to rely on here of what happens if the courts or Congress or both get, as you might expect they would, get fed up with this nonsense game of, well, what about 75% redaction? What about 65? What about 60? And finally, there's no precedent for just saying, that's it. You're all going to jail until I get my information. I mean, there's precedent for it in real life, in criminal proceedings elsewhere, but not here for saying the Attorney General is under arrest and going to jail until we get this information. They're just not going to do it. They're just not. And so if you're the Attorney General and your job is keeping the report from coming to light, how long would you pull this stunt? I guess until they did throw you in jail. But if they won't ever, then as long as you like. Yeah. I mean, if any of you can envision the president and or Attorney General being imprisoned midterm in order to get the information, I'd like to hear you describe it. It'd be great. I'd really enjoy it. But I don't think I know anybody that's going to do it. Even if they believe they have the authority.
Yep.
So,
I mean, it's going to be a fight. Hey, what are we waiting for is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
What is Richard Neal waiting for? And at this point, Nadler says today is the day, and Barr's obviously not producing anything. So what is he going to do?
Yeah.
Does he subpoena now? Does he send another stern letter? Because he's already sent enough stern letters, to be honest with you. All of them have sent enough stern letters. It's time to actually file a motion to compel court. It's what else is there to do, David? I'm sort of at a loss to what's left to do.
Yeah, we know what they're able to do. It's just that they won't do it. I mean, if you're not the Attorney General and you're subpoenaed and you don't give the information, the court knows what to do. The court does literally say you are going to jail until you produce it. You're in contempt of court, and that's that. And they can hold you until you
like Chelsea Manning with the court when she didn't testify to a grand jury. I mean, it's that simple. Here is a lawful subpoena. There's no basis for quashing it, and that's that. So what happens next? You go to court,
right? And normally you go to court. The court says, "Yeah, you can't just screw around like this." And if you don't give us the information, you're going in until you give it up. And if you don't give it up, you stay there, and there's no limitation on it. And that's, been done, tried, tested. It's entirely constitutional and happens, with some frequency. And that should happen here. However, they'll say, we don't do that to the Attorney General and certainly not to the President. You all heard about the famous memo. Of course, it does say what the memo says is you can't indict a sitting president. It doesn't say you can't throw him in prison for contempt of court. There's no indictment in that sense.
You don't even have to test that. But, you can just tell Barr you're compelled. If Barr says, I'm going to defy the court, which is an amazing thing for an Attorney General to have said. Well, let's say he does. Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. He can be jailed. Don't have to indict him. He's jailed for contempt.
Yeah. I mean, that's the normal. You would think. And of course, I mean, again, remember where we are. How do you jail a guy like that? How do you say he's not the Attorney General? He's
by sending someone over to put cuffs on him and put him in jail.
Who goes?
Jail. Just like you would anybody else.
Yeah. Well, who goes? Who brings the cuffs?
Oh, I hear what you're saying. Does the FBI? How do they arrest
him? The marshal.
The court has marshals.
Yeah.
There's a United States Marshal Service that works for the court. There are marshals in all courts.
Yeah, you're not saying the marshal of the Supreme Court.
Marshals, can go and arrest people for contempt. They do it all the time.
They can. That is their job. The marshals, I think, as a matter of fact, though, are employees of the Department of Justice. And
they are.
And, of course, they would be being sent to arrest their boss, which they might be very happy to do, but they could also be ordered not to do by their boss. And I don't know how that works out.
I think it's fairly clear. I mean, you're talking, separation of power. So then under that theory, nobody in the executive branch can ever be arrested. Unless,
of course, the legislative branch arrests them, which is entirely permissible and is a previously exercised power of the legislative branch, inherent contempt, upheld under the theory that, what if the contemner here is the Attorney General or another employee of the Department of Justice or the entire executive branch, for that matter, under unitary executive theory. But in other words, if the Department of Justice declines to arrest your contemner, what do you do? And the answer, if you're Congress, is you use their inherent constitutional authority to enforce its own subpoenas to arrest them with Capitol police officers and jail them themselves. It's a real thing. It just hasn't happened in nearly 100 years, and people will say that's not real because things that haven't happened for 100 years never happened, especially if it's not George Washington, because I don't know any other history, and that's, it will stun a lot of people that that's even a real thing, and it scares people.
The thing is, I'd like to get to that discussion, but that requires issuing a subpoena.
Yes.
To start it off.
Right.
When are they going to do it? Are they going to wait until November 2020?
I don't think. I don't know. I don't know how long they're going to wait. I guess it does require issuance. Yes.
This is a waste of time by us because it's going to end up we can't enforce it, and everyone's just going to look bad, and it's going to be unpleasant.
I mean, that is one lesson they could learn.
Is that the answer that Nadler and Schiff and I hear Schiff say things like, well, it's up to leadership, which, of course, it is at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know what they're going to say.
What you're going to do?
You wouldn't think so. Nadler's been through it before. He sat through the exact same scenario with the George W. Bush administration and watched it happen, and in the second or third chair, and watched John Conyers spend 2 years dithering over what to do when his subpoenas were ignored. And you'd think that he would say, I know this game. And he might. But does he say, well, to hell with all of the rest of you who are worried about the impact of this on your elections, I'm going to have him arrested? Or what? Then the answer is no, he waits.
Well, I mean, what would you do with somebody else who didn't respond to your subpoenas, Congress?
They would ask...
Well, do what you would normally do.
Well, they would normally ask the Department of Justice to try them for contempt.
All right. Okay.
So they do. And they say, no, we're not going to.
What happens then? I mean, that really, it's an issue that someone should be thinking about. And frankly, let's find out what the answer is. Maybe the answer is there's nothing you can do. But you know what? If you don't do anything, it's the same as if you can't do anything.
Yes, that's
so
true.
How do I know? Find out. I mean, I'm not saying, when you get to the point where it's calling out the Capitol Police, et cetera, well, when we get there, we get there. David, I understand where you're going. I'd like to take the first step to see where we go.
Oh, I think it would be interesting.
No more letters.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, there's really your bottom line here is there's no reason to delay subpoenas, no matter whether you're thinking of doing this, going all the way with inherent contempt, or chickening out in some other fashion. The first step of either path is issuing the subpoena, and the only reason for delay is because you're scared of something. Maybe the whole process, maybe getting out ahead of leadership's plan for how to milk this for election time, whatever it is.
I mean, the Richard Neal thing is really bizarre because this isn't even some wiggle room thing. It's right in the law.
Yeah, so you'll get to court quicker and they'll defy you in court sooner, and that's fine. So have it as an election campaign issue. The guy still won't.
Whatever you're going to do, at that point, frankly, I think impeachment's in order. Whatever the Senate does, people are going to defy lawful court orders. Suppose it goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, no, you got to give them that. Mm-hmm. And Trump says, I don't care what the Supreme Court says.
Yeah.
Is that an impeachable offense or is it not?
Yes, it is. And the question of whether they will do it or not is an open one. And let's have it. I don't mind that being a referendum in the election.
Listen, if that's not an impeachable offense, then what are we talking about?
Right. Well, then we're talking about Republicans who simply won't impeach a Republican president, period, no matter what he does, including shooting somebody on Fifth Avenue. And we should know that.
That may be. But that doesn't excuse you not impeaching him.
Oh, right. Oh, actually,
listen, everyone says it's an inherently political matter and we're wasting our time. No, it's not wasting your time. It's standing for something. If that's the argument, Republicans won't do it. Why is the House of Representatives passing anything?
I guess that's true. Right. That applies to anything.
Trump's not going to sign anything. Why are we doing it? Why don't we just all go home?
Yeah. And the answer is always, well, we want people to know in the election that we were for this and they were against it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like them to know the same. Yeah. I'd like them to know that you were for law enforcement and they were against it.
Exactly.
Yes.
I don't understand these arguments. They make no sense. It's like, okay, why did you pass H.R. 1? That had literally zero chance of passing.
Yes.
Because Mitch McConnell will never take it up. There's a reason why you passed H.R. 1, because you were saying where you stood on the issues. Right. Impeachment is like that. In fact, more important than that. Because I think H.R. 1 is hugely important, but I don't think it's a voting issue for most voters. I really don't. I mean, it's not even that potent a political issue. I don't believe. Impeachment could be.
Maybe, or I guess maybe not.
I impeached him because he defied the Supreme Court of the United States. Mm-hmm. We can't have a president who defies the Supreme Court of the United States. It doesn't have to be about the Mueller report anymore, or collusion, or obstruction of justice. There's this lawful court order that was okay because they're appealed. I'm playing it out. It goes to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court says the president has to comply, and he does it.
Maybe.
It's not about collusion, no collusion. Right. It's about whether we have a government of laws or not.
Yes, that's true. I guess there's.
And if you go ahead,
there's one other issue. Well, you know what? You should conclude this thought, and then I'll undo it in a minute. But if you have a situation there where the president of the United States is just defying orders of the Supreme Court, do you want to have a referendum on that? Okay, I will. I mean, some people might not care about that. I don't know. But I don't see why you can't. If you're going to vote on H.R. 1 and say people are going to care about this and come out because of it, then I don't see why you can't also say, and how about if we also say, plus he's defying orders of the Supreme Court and he should be impeached and they won't do it because they're corrupt and we will do it because we're not. Will people come out for that? Yeah, some other ones will, I think. Probably some of the ones not necessarily motivated by H.R. 1. That is to say, people who are privileged enough not to have their voting rights constantly being threatened. That sounds like a very nice idea to help out the other people there. So I'm for it, but it's not a big deal for me because I'm never blocked when I go to the polling place. Oh, wait a second. The president is defying court orders. That means something to me because I'm usually afraid of courts. So I will come out for that.
We're under the impression that we're supposed to obey court orders.
Yes, because with the exception of 2 or 3 people in the country, courts can put them in jail when they don't. And as it happens, the biggest criminal in the country is one of the 2 or 3 guys that supposedly can't be jailed.
So that's problematic. You want to send a message? The message is this guy is a criminal who doesn't obey court orders.
Yes.
That's what I don't get. That's why, to me,
I like that message myself.
Get there.
Yes. I don't know what I would be curious to know. I mean, I don't know, maybe you could convince me. Have me in and let me hear from the Pelosi staff why it is a net negative at the polls if this happens. And, if they have something, I'd be interested in hearing it. And they don't want to give away their strategy, but okay. And I could come out and say, it's confidential and it'll ruin everything if I tell you what the strategy is, but I heard it and I believe it. and then you'll have to choose what to do.
And you could go keep passing all your bills, your health care bill, your immigration bill, and blah, 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 and they'll go anywhere. And if you think that's the key message, whatever. But again, I just don't get it.
I don't know. I mean, on the other side of the Capitol over in the Senate, they're about to pull the nuclear trigger again to move nominations even faster, which, whatever, that's their prerogative, I guess. But they're going to be packing their agenda and jamming in as many judges and others as they possibly can. So I don't know why we're not building our arsenal on the other side and say, they're getting their way. We're only doing messaging.
Again, I love H.R. 1, just to give the most obvious example. How many people are going to cast their vote based on the fact that we passed H.R. 1 and the Senate didn't take it up?
I don't know. Of course, if we don't do the subpoenas and that's all we have, then some number of people will cast their vote based on that, because you ask them, why did you cast your vote for Democrats? And that's all they'll have to point to. And H.R. 1, just like before, right? Why are you voting for Democrats? Well, I wish it was because they were standing up to Bush's defiance of public opinion, court orders, etc., international law on torture, but it's not, because that didn't happen. So instead it's Lilly Ledbetter, because that's what I got. I don't know. You ask me, you want proof for, want some substance. Why am I voting for Democrats? Look, all I have is a Fair Pay Act, Lilly Ledbetter. That's what they've offered me. So that's the official response. So, deny me the subpoenas and I'll say, at that point, of course, I'll say, I don't really know why I'm voting for Democrats. I guess it must be H.R. 1, because it can't be their oversight skills. So, technically, yes, I'm coming out for H.R. 1.
I mean, that's right. I said, they actually did a crappy job of oversight, so it's got to be H.R. 1.
Yes, and I mean, this is the same, in a sense, it's the same story over and over again. I'm sorry, does not feel like a new episode of the show, but this does bother me a great deal. But you mentioned earlier Lindsey Graham now saying they want to reopen all the investigations into Hillary Clinton, which, of course, reminds me immediately of working hard, winning the White House for Barack Obama, majorities in both houses of Congress, almost filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, but of course they fought tooth and nail there to keep that out of our hands for 6 months plus. But whatever, okay, so we win it. Why? Because George W. Bush's administration was admittedly not as criminal as Donald Trump's has become, but criminal in its own right, and it was time to clean house and let's hold them accountable. But no, we can't look backward, because we have to focus on our agenda going forward. And, it makes a certain amount of sense, and we're going to pass historic health care, and that's going to help a lot of people. All right, okay, fine. Of course, the favor now being returned in spades as the Republicans consider doing exactly that. Let us prosecute the previous administration for its imagined crimes, rather than, so we look forward. They are reopening Hillary Clinton investigations, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, we all sacrificed cleaning house and prosecuting Dick Cheney and his cadre for their violations of the Constitution in order to win the Affordable Care Act, which did in fact help a lot of people, but also just got repealed by federal courts. and they have no plan to replace it, and they're going to let us all sit without insurance for 2 years before they even try, and then hand us a bundle of crap. But at least we didn't look backward. That really would have sucked. Imagine that, had we actually, upheld justice and also briefly had health insurance and lost it. But maybe I'm wrong about these things. Meanwhile, I guess...
You said everything I wanted to say, and it's just incredible that... Look, I love Pelosi. I don't get her strategy on this. I guess maybe there's polling that says people don't want this. I don't.
Maybe.
No. I mean, she's not. She knows what she's doing. There's got to be some logic.
Yes, she knows what she's doing, and I'm sure it's probably somewhat sound reasoning, but it could also still be wrong. So I'd just like to know what it is, and I imagine it's just there's just too many Dems. I mean, our majority at the moment, anyway, is built on Democrats who are occupying seats that could easily swing the other way, and impeachment is one of the issues we feel could swing it the other direction. And at least if there isn't a clear, and it may be that they change their minds if there's something clear, like the court says yes and Donald Trump says to hell with it, no, that might work in these swing districts and say, I am. With great sadness, I must announce that I am forced by my love for the Constitution, which you and I in this swingy swing district obviously share, because that's what swing voters love, constitutions. People come out to defend the Constitution all the time. It's never pocketbook stuff. And so now I'm forced to do this, and, okay. So they might accept it in that situation. I guess we have to consider the possibility that they might have to accept something else too. I mean, I don't want, this was the other complication I wanted to throw at you is, we keep saying, well, suppose the courts order it, and it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court orders Trump to do X, Y, Z, and Trump instead defies the Supreme Court. What do we do then? Okay, that is one scenario. I guess one other scenario that they might fear, some of them anyway, might fear it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court doesn't say that. The Supreme Court instead says, yeah, the president doesn't have to listen to you. And I mean, anything is possible with this Supreme Court, but it's also, again, the good time for it to be the 58th time I remind everybody that the first time this issue really developed fully and was presented to the courts, it was over then EPA administrators in the Reagan administration and Gorsuch's refusal to comply, and Gorsuch doesn't, it's no coincidence that Gorsuch is now on, or that there is a Gorsuch on the court. It's not a casual sharing of last names. That's her son. So Neil Gorsuch, Supreme Court Justice, gets to sit on the case for which the strongest precedent is the Gorsuch case, in which, where at that point they lost. But like we've noted a million times, this same cast of characters has been trying to relitigate all of what they lost in Watergate, which was, the wellspring of judicial willingness to uphold the right of the legislative branch and the rest of the country to, get at the heart of executive branch corruption, root it out, expose it, and expunge it from the body politic. And that has annoyed Republicans ever since. And bit by bit, they've been working on rolling that back. And now they have a president crazy enough to try anything, unembarrassed by anything, and also, by the way, a Supreme Court justice who thinks enforcing this against the executive branch was a mistake from the beginning. So now what? That's a fear. guess now if Pelosi said, yeah, my fear is that the entire constitutional order and separation of powers jurisprudence collapses in the face of presenting this question to Neil Gorsuch, I would say,
it's collapsed already.
Yeah.
That means it's already
right.
pre-collapsed.
Right. So your fear is losing the fight, so you surrender it. So I'm not sure I would not necessarily get that. I don't know. We'll be back again after this to discuss yet more of the collapse of the Republic. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal, except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on it. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now, once again, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and I guess we'll reconstruct part of the break conversation. Arliss Bunny had this suggestion as to what was Nancy Pelosi up to, and it's understandable. She's trying to help Schumer win and take the gavel in the Senate. And, of course, invoking Armando's own line here, it's the Supreme Court, stupid. And that will, of course, be largely controlled by what happens in, well, not only the White House, but in the Senate. So it's a theory. And I guess the theory here is, do we believe that there are enough voters out there who say things to themselves, and I have to believe there are such people because there's all sorts out there. Are there a lot of people who say to themselves, well, I definitely do think that Donald Trump is kind of a jerk, but I could go either way. I could take one more round of this jerk. I could consider a Democrat. What I don't want to hear is upsetting stuff about the danger to the Republic, because that makes me worried. I'd rather ignore that and just say, well, he was nasty to a handicapped person. And so let's have a Democratic president, and I'll vote for a Democratic senator here in my swing state. The idea of which, of course, is that it's the Supreme Court, stupid, and they're going to come in and pack the Supreme Court and add justices and do this very radical thing, even though, of course, I said I'm against radical things, but maybe they don't know that we're going to pack the court. I don't really know what it. But are there such voters? Yes.
Joe, I'm going to be
She's not
radical
wrong.
So I can sneakily do something radical.
I don't know.
No offense to Arliss. I'm glad she's looking for ways to get it done.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a relatively realistic way of doing it, is to say, well, we'll elect some moderate Democrats in some swingy states, and as long as there's more Democrats in the Senate than there are Republicans, then everything will begin to get better. So, and that is something that's within reach, as opposed to, well, okay, I know we can pack the courts. I know we can arrest individual members of the executive branch. But are there people who would somehow be scared of that and say, I prefer, what will be interesting is they'll say, that's outrageous that they're arresting people and imprisoning them on the authority of Democrats in the House of Representatives. That's a terrible thing. So what I prefer is a fascist autocrat. Wait, but the thing that the Democrats were doing is actually like established in American law and jurisprudence, whereas, fascist dictatorship is kind of outside of that. But yeah, but he's cutting my taxes. Yeah, but he isn't. Yeah, but he said he was, and that feels good. I'll take that. Again, are there such people? If you happen to be on Twitter last night when they were circulating the footage of the a panel of voters that they were asking people how I don't even know what they were doing. But they had one woman in there. It was all women, and one woman who had admitted that she had voted for Trump, but that it was really a joke to her. Have you seen this clip? No. Boy, does she get side-eyed and yelled at by the rest of the women on the panel. But this is a woman. This is going to be very bad. It shouldn't be taken this way. But the truth of the matter is, the woman explains her situation. She was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and she, at the end of the day, I'm in the voting booth, and all I knew is I don't like Hillary Clinton. Okay, I don't know why. I just don't. And I don't like either party. And I guess at some point she decided that her vote was going to be like a protest / joke, as she said. And she finally cast the vote for Donald Trump, at which the woman next to her said, the privilege of the thing you just said, the privilege inherent of you saying it's a joke to me. I'm going to vote like it's a joke while the rest of us, our lives are in danger, essentially, is what she's saying. You're going to vote as if it's a joke. And she immediately said, well, I don't mean joke. Allow me to, you just said joke. Well, allow me to, recant that and rephrase. And she goes on to explain, I preferred Bernie Sanders. I related to him, she goes on to say, creating an echoing of oy vey across the country. I related to Bernie Sanders. As a Jewish woman, I related to Bernie Sanders, and I thought that socialism and his program was the answer for the country. Of course, everybody's like, oh my God, why'd you say that? And how do you reach the conclusion that I believed in Bernie Sanders, I believed that socialism was the answer, but failing that, fascist dictatorship could possibly be the answer, and if not, it's at least a hilarious joke. That's how I'll cast my ballot. If there are those people, if there's one of those out there, then there's at least one person in, the Midwest somewhere who says, I'm very upset by the notion that, our president could be so criminal and so corrupt that we have to remove him from office because we've never had to do that before. And you know how I am about things we've never done before. So please don't do that. Instead, I would like to put marginally more Democrats in the Senate and maybe a Democrat in the White House so that things will be normal again. But please make it a Democrat who also won't look backward, because that's another thing we haven't done before. And again, I dislike change. So if we could just sort of have mostly white privilege and kind of lowish taxes again, I'd be good with that. And so, quite frankly, if that was all we could get, I would take that too. At least as a starting point versus, the continued collapse of things. But it seems less than inspiring. I guess you could say, but what, if it works, it works. Because, I thought we just had that election essentially. And it didn't work because Electoral College and maybe cheating and maybe Russia. So, I don't know. I'm maybe of the opinion that something a little more zesty is in order. But I could be wrong.
I've got 2 points on that just as an argument. And I've had this argument since 2016, and it's and it's come up in the primary already about can you get back the white no college voter? And I'll grant you, I don't think they care about rule of law, and I also don't think they care about whatever it is Democrats think, pre-existing conditions. You know what? We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated subject, certainly. Arliss following up, and saying that there might be people who are just like, look, I just want a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. I don't even, it's too much to hope for to win the White House as well. And we should be able to keep the president in line with a Democratic Congress. And it can't all be, one party rule. Or, there might even be people who say that and say, Trump is at heart a criminal, and what we need is to keep him in line, which is that is a little odd. I mean, why don't we just put him in jail if he's a criminal, right? We could do that instead. How about this guy is a murderer, but the cops are from the other party, so they'll keep him in line. We'll let him out. Okay, that's not what we're saying here, but fine. But anyway, she's just urging essentially like, okay, well, Nancy knows what she's doing and she's got a plan, and I understand that, and I have to always consider that because it's happened 100 times and it's always turned out to be, or not always, but mostly turned out to be true. On the other hand, I'm sure she has a plan, and I know a lot of people who are wrong but planned. And, okay, you got a plan. That's good. If that were all I needed to know, then I would say plan obtained. So you must be right and go for it. Nah, but of course, I tend to say, all right, well, what is the plan? Oh, that's a wrong plan. I know, but it is a plan. Well, she would do better than that, I'm sure. And Arliss is guessing at what the plan is. Can't tweet it to me, so that's not going to convince me.
But she's smart enough not to have some thought process.
Yeah,
one of the thought processes that bothers me is one that's been articulated by Neil himself, which he needs to lay the groundwork.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well,
actually
Neil
makes
in particular. That is an argument that has been, I think, originally was put forth for something more radical like impeachment, and I understand that a lot better for impeachment or some other radical procedure. Laying the groundwork for requesting those tax returns is done. It was enshrined in statute. Presumably, you laid the groundwork for passing that statute before you passed it. Now it's passed. We're done. The groundwork is laid. Ask for the tax returns.
And I don't think the polling in any way supports the idea that people are going to see asking for Trump's tax returns as overreach. Remember, every president has voluntarily released his tax returns.
Right. I mean, the 2016 laid the groundwork.
We're reluctant to have to use this. We're reluctant that we have to use this, but this is the president, the only one that in recent memory who didn't release his tax returns. So we have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's with great regret that the president has forced me to do this because he will not do what every president does.
Yeah, I certainly preferred that. I don't know. Yeah, people will still say it. You need to lay the groundwork. Well, 2016 was the groundwork. I don't know how you could have missed the issue of his refusal to release his tax returns in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19 so far, maybe 20 if we don't do anything about it. It's just like 5 years that he has, that there's been headlines all the time about, and jokes all the time. Late night talk show hosts joke about his not having released his tax returns. There's no more groundwork to lay. I'd be very surprised. Maybe this is it. I'll go do a poll. We go hire the polling company that Daily Kos uses and ask people, did Donald Trump release his taxes? And if I get my expected 70% plus say, no, he never did, groundwork laid. Go get him. You don't have to prosecute him with anything. Just, the law says you're entitled to ask for him. And he's never released them, and every other president has, and everybody knows that this is the issue, and go get it.
That's the groundwork. It's been laid.
Yeah.
It was laid on day one.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen between now and whenever he's going to actually ask for them? By the way, what groundwork has he actually laid? for it?
I don't know. That's a good question, too. I'm not sure what he's been working on.
What is he doing in these 3 months of groundwork laying? I haven't seen one piece of ground laid.
I guess not. I mean, I don't know what there would even be other than he.
I don't know either, but
so maybe I don't see it because I don't recognize it. Yes. Yeah. Well,
I just don't see it, and I don't know what to make of it. But I don't know what's going on in Congress in many ways, and I don't know if this is just about making deals for budgets and taking care of whoever you want to take care of, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I don't know for sure, and I guess I don't really know what Neil's waiting for, and I guess it's simply this feels tricky and dangerous, so I will approach with caution, but it's really not tricky and dangerous, and it's cut and dried. And I can't convince him he hasn't called me, so I don't know. Not sure why that doesn't proceed a little bit faster. I guess we probably I think exhausted the topic for the time being, and we'll have to come back to it because there will be further developments and further time spaces in the future during which Richard Neal does not request these tax returns. I guess that where he's from, he must be hearing from constituents who worry that it's some sort of invasion of privacy somehow, even though every other president has done it, and it was a huge, huge issue in the last campaign. Or maybe they thought that it wasn't a huge issue because the media didn't really play it up as one, because they had thrown their hands up in the air and said, we're never going to get them. Plus, also, there's so many other crazy things. But I don't know. Other issues looming out there, I guess, speaking of Neil Gorsuch, I noticed he was being taken to task yesterday for his opinion in a death penalty case, which we could probably examine at some future date. It might take us a little while longer to get through the issues here, but Gorsuch put himself atop the news in writing the opinion in Bucklew versus, what is this, Precythe? And I'm not certain about the pronunciation of the name, but apparently, as Ian Millhiser describes it in Think Progress, Gorsuch just handed down the most bloodthirsty and cruel death penalty opinion of the modern era, which is really something. But following on decisions that, I guess, dealing with the fallout over the lack of humane, if there is such a thing, injectable death penalty drugs, the Supreme Court is at a loss, as they have painted themselves into a corner by insisting that the death penalty, for some reason, though they don't know what the reason is, must simply be constitutional, because I guess the Constitution mentions that, that there can be capital crimes. So that's basically it. The Constitution mentions capital crimes, therefore capital punishment must be constitutional, and if you can't get the drugs to do it, then you got to find some other way to do it. But I guess the big twist on it is Neil Gorsuch says the other way to do it, I don't know what it is, but for some reason he thinks it would be fair to say the defendants themselves have to come up with the method. If they want to challenge the prevailing method in their state, or if they're being executed by the federal government, the federal government's methods, they have to outline an acceptable methodology for their own execution, unless they want to just submit by default to whatever the government that's going to execute them wants to come up with. Which seems, that does seem like maybe cruel and unusual. You have to design your own execution. I don't know if you read that one yet.
Oh, God.
But we will shortly, I'm sure in the coming days, discuss some of that. We'll read perhaps further in Ian Millhiser's analysis of it. Other things I wanted to revisit, and I don't know whether you want to stick around to hear them or not, but moving off of the investigative questions.
Well, let me see the first one, and if I have something to add to that, I'll stick around. If not, I'll leave.
So 2 stories to clarify or add something to. One was the other day, the question, this one we'll do quickly, the question of whether or not the New Zealand shooter had extremist ties overseas and whether or not his white supremacist ideology had been fed or driven at all possibly by Russia's agenda. The current linkage reporting is that the shooter had financial links with the Austrian far right, the Austrian identity movement, which has become the larger, wider European identity movement. They have their own Richard Spencer, that is to say, as they describe them in the CNN article, their own over-groomed millennial with a sharp haircut and heavy, thick-framed glasses who runs their far-right party over there in Austria. And I guess the shooter made a 1,500 euros donation to the private bank account of this Martin Sellner character who runs the identity movement in Austria. And, of course, the party platform of this far-right party in Austria is the dissolution of, the withdrawal from and dissolution of NATO and reorganizing Europe under the leadership of Russia. So, you know, it's this weird linkage between Russia and the European identity movements and then this European identity movement and this Australian shooter. So it's not direct, but just by way of update, I guess they're working on it. The second story on which I wanted to... They're working on it still. Investigators are looking into it, but not until after the election. And then the other update was the other day, the remarks of Sarah Sanders when she was, I guess, her remarks were clipped and we were being told that, or we were informed that she was saying that we should think about the seriousness, the craziness of accusing the President of the United States of being an agent of a foreign government, and that this was treason, punishable by death in this country. And I originally took that to mean that she was calling for the execution of people who were accusing the president here. The quote clip that I had seen being, they literally accused the President of the United States of being an agent for a foreign government. That's equivalent to treason. That's punishable by death in this country. And I took that to mean the accusers should be sentenced to death. And then it was pointed out to me that this is part of a longer quote, which they were arguing was in fact her saying they accused the President of the United States of being an agent for a foreign government. That crime of being an agent for a foreign government is equivalent to treason and punishable by death. And isn't it ludicrous that people in this country would dare accuse the President of the United States of having committed that crime? That wasn't a call for execution of the accusers.
First of all, that accusation isn't treason. Just to clarify that, treason. But fine. I mean, I know what you're getting at. She didn't. She said that what you accused the president of was punishable by the death penalty.
That is what the explanation was that was offered. However,
but it's not true anyway. Just to be clear, that's not true. It didn't constitute constitutional treason punishable by death.
Right. That is also true. But I was willing to accept the clarification that Sarah Sanders wasn't calling for the execution of the president's critics. That was until I heard last night this clip from Jeanine Pirro's show on Fox, and I think I can play it here. Let me see if I can get the volume up here. It's going to take
Jeanine Pirro.
Yeah. Now, of course, she's not an official spokesperson necessarily for the White House, but she's pretty closely followed by the president. And she had this to say. The first part of it is sort of a lead up. Just she builds her anger. But
when someone lies to you, do you just say, "Don't worry about it, I'll get over it"? Well, that's not how our system works. There has to be accountability. There has to be a consequence. Because as the president himself said, this should never happen again.
All right, so she's just building the anger here. Now, that is how that she doesn't know anything about how the system works. But okay.
When somebody lies to you, there has to be consequences?
Yes. I mean, that's a joke. Obviously, but it then builds to this. Now, she uses very much the similar language similar to what Sarah Sanders says. Now, so remember, I've just been convinced that Sarah Sanders was not saying that the critics need to be executed as traitors, but that it's ridiculous to say the president is guilty of treason.
And I can guarantee you it will happen again. Unless we make an example of the traitorous, treasonous group that accused Donald Trump of being an agent of the Russian government.
Whoops! Oh my God! Thank you for clarifying that, Jeanine. It's curious that the same language was used. It's almost as if talking points had been disseminated, as is usually the case among these Republicans. And I don't know whether she misread the talking points or read them correctly, but it now occurs to me that we may have been right about Sarah Sanders the first time, and that she was, in fact, calling for the execution of the president's critics, because Jeanine Pirro was doing it in exactly the same language.
No, I know it's a stupid point, but that's not what the accusation wasn't that he was an agent of the Russians. It's that he colluded with the Russians.
Yes, that too.
For his own benefit and to benefit the Russians. He made a deal with the Russians.
Yes.
He's working for his own personal interest, and in exchange, he is offering the Russians things in their interests.
Right. And
so
it's not necessarily the same thing.
Correct.
However,
it's not.
Right.
Although it's more like bribery. It's
yes.
More the other word that's in the Constitution. It's more of a bribery thing.
True. That, at least in its initial forms. Now, of course, I guess, could it rise to the level of treason? It could, if the quid pro quo is, well, we'll give you money. Right now, it's, we'll give you money and you
surrender the country.
Lift sanctions. That's bad. But treason? No, I don't know. I'll give you money and you, dissolve NATO. Well, that's closer. I'll give you money and you allow Russian occupation of Alaska. Yeah, I guess so.
That crosses the line.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Is it bloodless or does that? Because it does say he has to wage war. So if we surrender it peacefully,
invading our territory is war.
You would think so.
The president says there's an invasion.
Yeah, right.
Of the southern border.
Right, that's true.
That'd be an invasion at the northern border.
Right, I guess by the same logic, but I don't really want to be caught using Donald Trump's logic if I can help it. But the point is, it could rise to that level. So far, it hasn't. Although it is a little worrisome that we do things like, let's cancel our military exercises with South Korea, and let's criticize NATO and maybe dissolve it, and let's, what else, are we going to do that mollifies the Russians here, and to what extent does it damage our national security? And the answer is we'll never know, because what is national security anyway, given that we just give out security clearances to anybody that the president decides to hand them to. Oh, and by the way, I'm curious. I know you mentioned that Barr was redacting the Mueller report on 4 bases, one of which is, of course, national security information as well, should that exist. I'm just curious, are any of the people who are working on redacting the national security information out of the Mueller report actually holders of legitimate national security clearances?
good question.
Because I do not know, and they won't tell us. And they're not supposed to hold security clearances and are at the same time redacting national security information out of the Mueller report, we could have a problem. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, we got to wrap it up and hand things over to Justice. Thank you for standing by and discussing everything. It's always easier to do with someone else there. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. All right. I agree.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we'll talk to you again later in the week, perhaps, or at least pick up notes from you tomorrow. Of course, Wednesday, Joan McCarter and Greg Dworkin rejoin us, and we'll discuss this and much more and get back to the nuclear option coming back to the Senate. In the meantime, the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is up next with Justice Putnam, talking about Tricia Newbold, just as we did. Also, the Homeland Security's Domestic Terror Unit is eliminated by the Trump administration. It's not a priority.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Justice has got you covered on that Gorsuch decision on the death penalty as well. Environmental lawyers fight fire with fire as they adopt ALEC's legislation in a box methods to tackle climate change. And the U.S. women's soccer team says their lawsuit is about more than money, plus much, much more. Coming up next.